victims who are a man and a woman are also Venezuelan migrants. They said they were brave to call 911. The details of this crime are just horrific. Police detained up to 15 suspects believed to be Venezuelan migrants as well. They say broke into an apartment, took the victims to another unit where they were bound, pistol whipped, and the male was stabbed. They were terrorized for more than 4 hours before the victims promised not to call police if released, and they were. The victims did call authorities. Today, the police chief had strong words for the White House.
I had a discussion with an individual from the White House, and that occurred back on September the 23rd, I believe. And that person basically told me that, hey, once these immigrants get across the border, that's all we really care about.
Oh, now we want to have the conversation. Oh, wait a minute. The election is over, so we're going to let out the information. We're going to start having honest conversation. Because it's not like they're going to get back into the White House anyway. So let's just have some real conversations. People at the White House told them, listen, once they all get over the border, this is what we need to about. He's telling you directly now. Because back then, they were silencing them. And they were telling them that they not really eat dogs. They not terrorizing nothing. They just popping off. Springfield, Aurora, all of these places. And listen, y'all, they capping. They lying. They exaggerating the situation. He's saying that before the election even happened, remember when they were standing out outside this apartment building, and the mayor of Aurora was sitting there saying, you know, but it's not really even that big of a deal, and this is not happening. And the mayor of Denver, Mike Johnson, saying, you know, it's not happening over here either. He said he called the White House, and the White House said, what?
And that occurred back on September the 23rd, I believe. And that person basically told me that, hey, once these immigrants get across the border, that's all we really care about. And to me, that's a problem. So Aurora, we are now in the process, as many other cities throughout this nation, of trying to pick up the pieces of an incredibly bad system that was in place.
This is the same complex, as you mentioned, Martha, where that Ring camera captured armed TDA members. The chief says there's no question last night's attack was committed by gang members, but can't yet confirm that these are TDA. Today, the Aurora City Councilwoman who sounded the alarm on this issue had this to say.
Tired of this situation being downplayed. I am tired of this being portrayed as just another gang. You know,
y'all do know that Colorado was also a blue state. We going blue state. Blue state, blue state, blue state. We going Chicago, Illinois. We gonna go Aurora, Denver, Colorado. Then we gonna go New York right after this.
this is actual human suffering of the most vulnerable, the ones who would otherwise be afraid to call 911.
And Martha, those two victims are still in the hospital.
Let's take a little bit more deeper coverage to better understand exactly what they were hiding from us. Because they were saying that we was crazy and we didn't know what we didn't know.
And we are tracking breaking news this morning. 14 people detained at the edge of Lowry Apartments in Aurora early this morning. So that complex, of course, drawing national attention in recent months. Thanks for being here at 8 o'clock. I'm Andrea Henderson.
Hey guys, I'm Kirk Youngke. Police responding to reports of a home invasion, a stabbing, and a potential kidnapping. So let's get over to Fox 31's Courtney from. She's out there live at the scene. I know, Courtney, you've been trying to talk with police, get some more information. Obviously, you can see the scene as it develops behind you, and quite the response. Do we know why a SWAT vehicle is there?
Yeah, good morning to you both. We are still working to get all those details. I have been in contact with Aurora Police, specifically on why the SWAT vehicle is here, and then on top of all of that, to see if there's any sort of connection potentially to the Venezuelan gang situation that we've been talking about over the last few months. It has made the national spotlight as well, but you can see the scene still here. The edge at Lowry Apartments, really, really busy. Several Aurora police cars, that SWAT vehicle right off there in the distance. We saw 8 ATF, that's alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. They're also on scene, and it looks like Aurora Police's command unit as well. Now, just a few minutes ago, when we checked in with you guys, the fire department was here, and an ambulance was also on scene. They have since left, but they still have that portion of the road blocked off. That's here on Dallas between 12th and 13th. But let me give you guys a little breakdown of what's going on, what we know so far from APD. They say 14 people have been detained after officers responded to a report of a home invasion with weapons right here at the edge at at Lowry Apartments. This all happening just before 2:30 this morning. Aurora PD says an armed home invasion involving a stabbing and a kidnapping, that all unfolding here. Now, early into the investigation, it suggests several suspects entered an apartment occupied by two people. The suspects then moved the victims to another property within the building where they were threatened and bound. So definitely some scary stuff here. Now, an adult man we do know has non-life-threatening injuries following a stab wound during the situation. And then later into the morning, the suspects actually released the victims, and from there they were able to call 911. But 14 people detained and currently being questioned by investigators, but clearly a really, really large scene here. And like I said, I have been talking to APD. They are expected to come out here in the next few hours or so and potentially give us an interview or talk to us and give us some more information that's going on. What are you saying, Anthony? Okay, and it looks like, according to my photographer who's able to zoom in, I'm not able to see as far down as him, they just put somebody in the back of one of the patrol cars right down here. So something we're going to be following. I know Kirk and Andrew, we talked about this just a few minutes ago when we checked in with you guys. We don't know if all 14 people detained were involved in that home invasion or into that apartment and grabbed those victims. We don't know how many people are going to be potentially arrested or charged with all this whole situation, but definitely something we'll be following throughout the morning. But if you're coming in this area, it's kind of interesting that, you know,
look at the windows. Remember when it was, you know, because there was people that was actually traveling to Denver and all of that stuff, and they were saying, you know what, everything is secure. We put a fence around it. Nothing is happening. We good now. Remember all that? Remember when they said that everything was great and that we all good and the residents are safe now? Ain't a window that's available to be able to see out of those units. Every single window is boarded up, and I bet you it's still I bet you it's still being held down. I bet you it's still residents is taking refuge. Look at that. That is literally the hood. That is the ghetto. That is the every day up and down those streets in order to get to school.
All these police officers out here, the SWAT vehicle, but then there's families walking their kiddos with backpacks.
It's some of them that still got air conditioners outside. I remember I looked at a guy that was going through it and he said it was rats and roaches and all of that. And it had gotten so bad because none of the gang members and none of the migrants would even allow for any maintenance workers or anybody. So they basically just took control of the whole thing. They shut it down just like New York City. And they made it their own.
get them to school, I imagine. Just a very, very active scene. We'll keep you guys updated throughout the morning as more information becomes available. We're not live or unfortunately not focused anymore.
I think it's interesting. So we know this all started happening. Police first responded around 2:30 this morning.
Right.
So you think, 5.5, 6
Still
hours
taking people
later,
into custody.
that they're still taking people in.
Right.
This is clearly a massive operation that they're kind of dealing with right
And I
now.
wonder if they're still, Courtney, it sounds like maybe trying to still figure out, all right, what happened here, who's involved, who did what, who's responsible, et cetera, et cetera. And so many allegations about the Venezuelan gangs at those apartment buildings, and we haven't heard anything about that at this point from police, have we?
You're not going to hear anything from the police because what I believe is happening is that the authorities and the mayor, not so much the national authorities, but the authorities and the mayor is saying shh, and for multiple reasons. Number one, mayor don't want to look bad. He want to keep his job. Number two, they don't want to continue to substantiate that there was actually wrong and to confirm what everybody was thinking in the first place. And number three, they are harboring criminals. Harboring criminals. Every last one of those people should be deported. Every last, oh no, we gotta wait till they commit a crime. Like Eric Adams said. We gonna get to Eric Adams. Let's talk about Eric Adams. Give me a second. Let me read a couple of these super chats and we're gonna talk about Eric Adams. Shout out to Call Me Tazzy, says, yo, that's my old apartment complex, man. Really, Tazzy? That's your old apartment complex? Thank God for growth. You know what I'm saying? Josh McLean says, off topic, paid off 14 bands of student loan payments just now. I'll give an update next December. God willing, appreciate your time. Don't keep inspiring. Shout out to the bag chasers and the Patreon members. Make sure y'all tap into the Patreon links in the description, as well as pinned to the top of the chat. Let's get into Eric Adams for a minute. So, Eric Adams, EA Sports. EA Sports is out here in these streets. And it seems like he can't get enough of these news conferences. And I suspect it's for a couple different reasons. In this particular interview, he interviewed with Bloomberg. And one of the things that he's talking about and communicating is about the migrant crisis, the immigrant crisis that's happening over in New York. His partnership, he goes into it a little bit more with Trump and Tom Homan. And then also on top of that, he talks about parking. And so I want to deep dive into this because me personally, I'm still not fully convinced that Eric Adams has joined the board of magnitude. I'm not convinced. I believe that in order for Eric Adams to get a pardon, that he needs to go all aboard. Listen, you gotta believe one way in, halfway in, and halfway out. That's the same thing that you're supposed to tell your girl. If you got a girl that's halfway in and halfway, if she's not sure that she want to commit, you're gonna have to draw a line in the sand and say, hey, listen, either you all the way in or you all the way out. I'm not dealing with no chicks that still want the availability of doing what they want to do when they want to do it. I mean, you're not mine for the streets. You're not mine. It's just one time for everybody. I can't do nothing with somebody that's halfway in and halfway out. I can't hang out with people that, hang out with me and then they go and hang out with the others. I can't commit to you if you're not committed to me. I can't give you a pardon if you still want to harbor fugitives and criminals in the name of sanctuary city status. You're going to have to either be all the way in or all the way out. The Lord said you can't be lukewarm. He spit you out of his mouth. That's what God said. You're going to have to be all the way in or all the way out. You can't correct the pillar of salt moment here. You can't be sitting here walking away and then turn around because you miss it. You're going to get turned into a pillar of salt. And I just believe that people like Eric Adams, and it's a lot of consumers, it's a lot of regular people that's trying to play on this. They don't want to fully commit. I seen that with Stephen A. Smith. I did a review video with Stephen A. Smith yesterday. And Stephen A. Smith seems to be playing both sides. He want to say he a registered independent because he really voted Democrat, but he want to act like he really not conservative values. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I'm not convinced. I think Eric Adams got railroaded. I think that Eric Adams tried to play the game along with the Biden administration. And once he realized that they wasn't going to reciprocate the level of help that he wanted to, that he flipped. Eric Adams may be worse than Brandon Johnson. Let's talk about it. Let's get into his interview. And I'm going to explain to you why Eric Adams, I'm split on this. Eric Adams might be worse than Brandon Johnson. I'm going to explain why.
Wanted to start on the topic of immigration in particular. New York City is a sanctuary city. Does that get reversed anytime soon so the NYPD can help deport immigrants?
And it is so important. That term has been thrown around without any real understanding of the meaning of it. The sanctuary part of it is to state to immigrants, undocumented, and whomever that utilize our services. Have your children educated in schools, call law enforcement if you're a victim of a crime. You have a right for medical care. That is what we believe in. And what the problem was is that this was in place since Mayor Cox, Mayor Bloomberg, but the changes that were made under the previous administration that prevent law enforcement and any city agency from collaborating with ICE for deportation reason, I just don't believe that. Those who commit...
He playing both sides, man. Listen to him.
Serious violent crimes, we should collaborate with ICE to make sure they're not on our streets committing threats and dangers to migrants, asylum seekers, and everyday New Yorkers.
Okay, so Mayor, that's a yes to revamp the sanctuary laws, if I'm hearing that correctly. Now, you met with Trump supporters last week, if I'm also remembering correctly. What have you both discussed? What is the roadmap going forward?
To collaboration. I've stated it from the beginning. I was talking about this even prior to the election. It's about public safety to me, and we're going to sit down with our team and his team and work out the plan of dealing with those who are dangerous and should not be in our city or country.
He's not saying that I align with the Trump administration as far as making sure that illegal migrants that are over in here, because to be over here illegally is a crime in itself. But illegal migrants that are over into this country should not be here, and they got to go through the right way just like everybody else. He's not saying that. He's saying that, listen, you got to commit, not even just commit a crime. Listen to the words that is coming out of his mouth. You have to commit a violent crime. Keyword, violent crime, in order to be removed as far as him working with the border czar, Tom Holland, and the Trump administration to make sure that New York City is safe, that its citizens are not paying for people that are not supposed to be here. He's putting a caveat on it. It's not just, hey, you commit a crime or you do this, you do that. Hey, listen, use the city services, do what you got to do. You are entitled to that. That's what you believe in. But the only thing that we don't agree with regarding sanctuary city status is if you commit a violent crime, then you should be deported. We want to work with the Trump administration on it. So you got to wait till somebody get killed, beat upside their head, raped, in order for them to get somebody out of there that ain't even supposed to be there in the first place. Got it. Let's continue.
When we talk about, though, the methods that will be used, there was a lot of hay, of course, made about your meeting last week with Tom Holman, the cooperation that you will have to have one way or another with the Trump administration. As you know, Mayor, a lot of the issues with the first Trump administration and the way that they dealt with undocumented immigrants wasn't so much it's used to round them up here. Will you be cooperating on the roundup part of that?
Well, I think that the border czar will articulate exactly what their methodologies are and how they want to operationalize what they want to do. In the city, we're clear. And I want to take all the anxiety away from our migrants, asylum seekers, and undocumented individuals. Continue to use the service that your tax dollars are paying for. I am zeroing in on those who are committing repeated violent crimes. I say this over and over again, and let's be clear, the American public have communicated loudly and clearly. We have to fix our border, we have to keep dangerous people out of the country, and that is why they voted for this president to do so.
They certainly did, but according to a Siena poll, a lot of those people also voted not just to deal with the violent immigrants, but pretty much all. And some of that has to do with the budget pressures on this city as a result of all those folks coming in. Almost $7 billion spent just since mid-2022 on shelters, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands.
Let's back that up. Let's get that number again. I want y'all to realize and take into consideration what I've been saying about Chicago.
Budget pressures on this city as a result of all those folks coming in. Almost $7 billion spent just since mid-2022 on shelters. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of migrants still in this city using city services. Can New York City afford that?
No, they cannot. Like you indicated, $6.5 billion. You know what I could have done with $200 million of that? I could have gone after those chronically absent young people. Hundreds of millions of dollars we could put into our older adults. These were taxpayers' dollars that were used for a national problem. White House only gave us roughly a little over $200 million out of $6.5 billion. And we can't. Look at what's happened to Chicago, Denver, Los Angeles, all of these big cities that had to take on this crisis. It was wrong, and we need to make sure that it doesn't continue to happen.
Did you have to take in all those migrants, Mr. Mayor? There was a lot of questions, particularly on some of those migrants being either bused here or shipped here, rather than them coming here voluntarily. I mean, there were some mechanisms in place where you could have turned those folks around. Why didn't you?
No, and I'm so glad you said that, because that was one of the most misunderstood. People would stop me every day on the streets and say, wait a minute, what are you doing to us, Harry? I had no authorization to stop the buses from coming in that would violate federal law. I had no authorization not to give them a place to sleep, 3 meals, and the other amenities. That's against local laws. And I had no authorization to allow them to work that would violate federal law. I couldn't even allow them to volunteer and give them a stipend to clean streets, remove graffiti, and other services. The federal government said, no, you cannot, Harry. So, no, we did not have any other choice. We were successful, though. Out of those 220,000, 170,000, we were able to.
Are y'all listening to the same thing that I'm listening to? I just want to make sure that we all on the same page. Molly, I don't believe that there's too many government police. I think that there's meetings. I 100% believe that there's meetings. That is, listen. I never forgot. I never forgot Eric Adams sitting here at the bus station, clapping his hands and congratulating, shaking hands with migrants, and saying that we love you guys, and we can't wait for you guys to be here. We are a sanctuary city, and we will house you, we will shelter you here in New York City. And the reason that they did it is because they thought that they were going to get reimbursed. They put the money up, and they thought that they was going to get reimbursed, while at the same time bolstering their voter rates and increasing the ability for them to have migrants do jobs that they didn't think that was suitable or that people were taking. And so they were going to fill all of these jobs, increase the amount of money that they was getting from the federal government, while at the same time having more money circulate inside of the city, and increase their voter ranks to reinforce their democratic ways and their liberal environment, and having them keep them in office forever. If y'all don't think that this was a money play, this is why he played along. Never at any point in the beginning did he think that it was a problem for this to happen, as long as he thought that he had federal government support. Not at one point did he think that it was a problem as long as they had federal government support. They were all in. And it wasn't until Congress wouldn't get him no money and the Biden administration left him hanging in Kamala Harris that they started to speak out, and then they became lepers, and that's when he started to get investigated. Then he wanted to say, you know what, this and that, so on and so forth. In the meantime, you know what he was doing? You know what I remember? Because I reported on it every single day. They were talking big stuff about Texas. They had basically pitted themselves against Texas. They never spoke against the border. They never spoke about closing off the borders. That's why Governor Wheelchair down there, that's my favorite governor, Governor Wheelchair down in Texas, Professor X, he said, all right, listen, y'all want to continue to advocate to keep the borders open, y'all want to sue us, y'all want to talk stuff up there in the north, okay, y'all sanctuary cities, you want to designate yourself as a sanctuary city, you want to take advantage of migrants, I'm going to give you all that you can have. It's just not fair for me to just have to suffer down here in Texas, and for the people, the taxpayers to suffer down here in Texas. They went against Governor Wheelchair down there in Texas, and this is why they don't want to give him up 30 to 40 million. They don't want me to say Governor Wheelchair on the national networks. I would say it. I like it. I think that Governor Wheelchair did a phenomenal far as why liberals don't necessarily like Trump, is because it's one thing to finesse people. It's another thing to just tell them the truth and let them make a decision for themselves. Brandon Johnson in Chicago is no different, not even a little bit. He's no different than what he advertised himself to be, which is one of the reasons why I hold voters accountable for him maintaining power and even coming into power in Chicago. I don't feel sorry for Chicago. It's because Brandon Johnson is exactly what he presented himself to be. He didn't lie to you. He may be trash, but he your trash, and he never presented himself to be anything other than trash. He protested against police. He was with Black Lives Matter. He wanted to be one of the police. He was he been trashed the entire time. He always had his mohawk before he got into office. This ain't new. This is what he was. And I'd rather be able to get some insight on who you are and who you really, you know what I'm saying, make a decision for myself, even if I don't agree with you. Now, I just so happen to be aligned with all of the principles and the things that Trump stands for. But the one thing that people can't say is that he's not authentically who he is. And Eric Adams, in my opinion, is a chameleon. He is a chameleon. I'll call him Hot Wheels now. I don't care what I'm going down Hot Wheels. Shout out to Greg Adams. Eric Adams is a chameleon. You don't know who you gonna get, what you gonna get, what he stands for, depending on who in power at the time. He just gonna move around in order to try to stay connected. He's a chameleon. I don't like chameleons. I don't. You can't trust them. Even your adversaries. You know who you're dealing with your adversaries. You know where you can and can't go. You know what neighborhoods you